Lead with Legacy, the official podcast of IOL Global. Here, we will explore leadership that outlives titles and trends. Through conversations with faith-based and marketplace leaders, we will discuss integrity, conviction, and purpose. To learn more about us, visit us at iolglobal.com. Today, we are so honored to have Mr. Mike Fesko. Mike is a PMP and a pure project manager, which is how we got in contact initially, which was pretty exciting. So I am going to let Mike go ahead and introduce himself a little bit, tell us a little bit about himself, what he's doing, and what's current, and then we will get moving.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Sloane. Good to be here. I'm a project manager. I just feel good inside when I say that. And I'll tell you what, I spent 23 years in the Air Force, had a full career there, did a lot of different things, and much of it had to do with project management or large programs. I started sensing, because I started out as an engineer, I started sensing that there was more, I guess, excitement and management that I could learn and put out there if I was in the project management field. So I eventually transitioned. When I got out of that, I did industry. I was in aerospace, and now I'm in IT. I just love the work. And I'm at a point now in my career where I like to help others who are aspiring to be project managers, because sometimes you get stuck and you don't get noticed and you don't have visibility. And somebody who's got some experience can kind of talk you through the rough spots. So that's kind of what I'm doing now in my spare time, while I'm enjoying and blessed by having a wonderful full-time job at a great company. So that's where I'm at now. I also started putting a newsletter out because I thought it would be interesting for people to subscribe to that for no cost and read some articles about some things. So that's me in a nutshell.
Wonderful. Well, first of all, let me thank you for your service. And
Sure.
we
Thank
appreciate
you.
you so
Thank you.
much. And it's such an honor. It's an honor to have you on here because I know the work that you're doing and it's really meaningful. And that's the type of conversations that we want to have. Part of our mission at IOL is that, we want to serve God and we want to serve people. And I know we have some similarities in that. And so it's really just truly amazing to have you on here. And I think you're about 50,000 times smarter than I am. So I always learn something from you when we're talking. So it's really, really great.
Okay.
And the newsletter is incredible. So we're going to talk a little bit about that at the end of the podcast. But it is really amazing. And I highly recommend subscribing to that. It is, like Mike said, free. So there's no reason really not to. All right. So let's just jump into some questions. What shifted for you from managing projects to experiencing personal leadership transformation?
Well, I think part of it is managing projects. It can be kind of stiff and mechanical when you first start, because basically you have a lot of things going on, a lot of people talking about a lot of different things, all these loose ends, all these little pieces of chaos that pop up and can bite you. But if you watch the leaders around you and you learn to communicate, and I know one of the big mantras of project management is, PMs spend 90% of their time communicating. So when you learn to do that and you learn to gain the trust of the people around you and vice versa, they gain the trust of us as PMs, you start to develop some of the things that are called soft skills in addition to the hard skills on the knowledge of the technical areas. So the transformation kind of happens in, I just got thrown into this pool. I mean, I was good enough, if you want to use that term, to pass an interview and get hired by a company. And then you get in there and you start doing things and you find out that didn't work, that did work. But I did find that if you watch the managers around you that succeed and that inspire confidence, you will pick up things that will enable you to become that project manager style. Everybody out there can watch leaders either on, YouTube videos or LinkedIn or on TV, whether they be politicians or military people or industry people. You can look at leaders and see right away, do they inspire you, or do they I don't trust that person. So when you as a PM can see enough of the leadership around you that works and start to absorb that and reflect that back to others, that's kind of where the transformation comes. And that's kind of what happened for me. In the military, of course, the military is kind of a strict regimented environment. However, a lot of people get the impression that when you get out of the military and you want to get into industry, all you can do is take orders and give orders. That is not true, especially I found in the project management realm, because you've already had years of experience of dealing with contractors and dealing with people who have requirements that have to be met. And there's a set of soft skills and ways of doing that you can develop yourself and develop more as a PM. So I think that's what it's really down to is don't be unwilling to learn every day from those who you trust and who you'd follow.
I love that. That's such a great answer and really, really points to what we're talking about here in this podcast and leading with legacy and being the type of leader that people can trust, right? That they can turn around and go, that's somebody that I want to be like, or that's somebody that I want to work under. Because I know like most of us have had leaders that we cringe at and we're like, oh, that is not the
Yeah.
person, and it's time to move on. Because when you have somebody in leadership that doesn't lead well, it makes the entire situation extremely difficult. So I've been really honored to and blessed to know quite a few of you that have been in the military and are now project managers. And I have to say, you guys really, really emulate what leadership is so well. And I think because you've had that time in the military and you've learned those principles, how hard do you think it is for people in the military to transition to project management? Is it easier or harder? And what's your advice there?
I think it's I don't want to say easy, but it's a familiar landing pad when you get there. It's going into a company where the people who are hiring you, the hiring manager, the team, they all know where you've been. And to some, those are, people are impressed by that. Others are like, I don't care. And the other ones are like, I don't know if I can work with this person. However, it it's easy, so don't worry about it. But I've noticed in the last year or two, there's been a growing cadre of people on LinkedIn, and I think you know some of them. I think Joshua is one of them, um, who who specializes in coaching or mentoring people who need that little bit of what do I do to fit in better? They're good at that. So
Yeah,
with a little coaching, if you're stuck. Now, I had an interesting situation related to that question. When I got out of the military, I got into a defense contractor and I felt very comfortable being there and felt like I fit right in. But I noticed that there were things that I was surprised by that I should have done it this way or I should have done this instead of the approach I took. And it got to where the manager would have to coach me a little bit. And one interesting thing he said one time was, I have to remember where you military guys come from. And I was taken back by that. It's like, I don't know what you mean. But after I sat there for a day or two and thought about it, I said, yeah, I think I get it here. So, it's time for me to learn a little bit, open up the aperture and see the course that he's trying to guide me on. And that's what a good manager mentor can do for you.
that's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we'll just kind of shamelessly plug Joshua just because you mentioned him, and I think it's good that people know. I don't think he'll mind a bit. So Joshua Banwart, he owns Avalon Grade Solutions, and so what he does is he assists people coming out of the military and doing that transition into the civilian world, is specifically project managers, but I don't think he is only tied to that. And I could be wrong, but he does an amazing thing where he assists those that have been in the military coming out into the civilian corporate world and helps them build their resume, build those soft skills, mentors them, walks them through the process. Another one that I'm going to go ahead and kind of shamelessly plug is Russell Parker. He's with Risk 44 PM. Mike and I are huge fans of Russell. Highly advised. Russell has an incredible YouTube channel. And if you are not on that channel, absolutely go and subscribe to it. So those two guys in particular, and there's several more, and we won't spend all our time naming everybody, but for sure, there are some resources out there. So if there's people watching this that have been in the military or are in the military and they want to do a transition over to project management or the corporate world, it is very possible. These guys are absolutely killing it. They're doing an amazing job at this, and they are great mentors. You, Mike, Russ, and Joshua, and several others. So there are a lot of resources, and we would be happy here at IOL to put people in touch with those resources too, because we definitely want to see people succeed. All right, so moving on, I'm going to let our director of operations, Sloane Lott, he's one of my favorite people in the world, take over the questioning for a little bit because this is not the Amanda show. So
I love the Amanda show. I live the Amanda show every day. So I'm okay to co-star on that one.
All
But I
right.
did want to ask you, Mr. Mike, you often describe project management as a discipline centered on people, not just processes. What do leaders commonly misunderstand about the true role of a project manager?
The way you phrased that was exactly right. I mean, project management is mechanical in a way. It's process, it's framework, and all that kind of stuff. But I always think about the fact that if you complete a project and look back on it, you realize every day the only way any of that got done was with people. And people can be efficient or they can be inefficient. They can be motivated or they could be unmotivated. There's a lot of stuff that goes on people's minds every day. Now, if I think of my life or your lives, there's a lot of distractions. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of fog and friction of war kinds of stuff. But we carry on every day and we do the things we need to do. So when we get to the point of managers needing to understand the people, the fact that they're not robots, and some people are treated like that in companies, and that's a shame. But the good leaders will understand, can strike a rapport with the people, can converse with the teams, listening. And I think probably later we'll get into a term called servant leadership, but that's one of the big things. You can serve your customer, you can take the requirements and deliver all the pieces into a nice package, which is at least what they wanted or maybe a little better, but it takes the people to do that. So if you can keep them motivated, if you can have relationships with them and they don't have to be formal, hierarchical, organizational chart kind of relationships, it can be conversational. It can be, people become friends too. And that kind of leads back to what I said earlier. It's like if they're exhibiting the kind of traits that would make you want to follow them or have at least a communicative relationship with them, then they're doing a good job and you can learn to emulate that too.
Absolutely. I think leaders in many sectors, right, sometimes will sacrifice empathy at the altar of efficiency. And so
Mhm.
I think that's just where we have to remind ourselves people first. People first. Mr. Mike, what happens to teams and leaders when guidance, clarity, and healthy leadership are missing?
Guidance, clarity, and healthy leadership not there. Ooh, teams, I mean, basically are going to fall apart. They could. I mean, they could bootstrap themselves and just get through it all, but it's not going to be a fun part. I mean, clarity, you got to understand what's expected of the team. There has to be a shared vision from the beginning, and that includes not only your team but your customer team. Because if you're not all, looking far down the road together and aiming for the same spot, you're going to wander all over, and that's inefficient. So basically, you're gonna erode trust. You're gonna erode efficiency. You hear the term scope creep, things that start to kind of go where they shouldn't be going, and that costs money and that costs time. So there's a lot of interruptions that happen when that's not there.
Yeah, I agree. And scope creep is definitely a problem. We talk a lot about that in project management, don't we? And we I think we talk about it more than we fix it. So what is broken in traditional project management training in your opinion and what needs to change? Like if we could change one thing, what would it be?
If you're talking about professional certification kinds of training, which is one way. There's also the certificate kinds of training and all that. I think it's focusing more on the real life of a PM. I did get my PMP many years ago and it was a rigorous course. It really was. But as I got further and further away from it, I realized there was a lot of, and this isn't a bad thing. It's just in my mind, there was a lot of process, input, output, what leads to what. And you start understanding the mechanics of project management very well, but you don't understand the application in real life sometimes. When the Pure PM thing came up in January of 2025, I decided to look into that because it was about projects under realistic expectations, which is what Pure is about. That took a different approach. So what's missing, I think, is mixing the two between the rigor of the PMP and the practicality of the Pure. That's probably what's missing more than anything else. And when you get into it, like if you're coming from military to an industry, or if you're coming from one industry like healthcare and you're going into IT, for some reason the collection of knowledge and skills has allowed you to transfer and make that jump. Willing to open your ears and again, watch what's going on around you, learn from how things are done, learn the terminology, and then, talk to your manager. That's another thing you really got to do is start a rapport with your manager because you want to go in and have one-on-ones. You want to go in and talk about the realities of your daily life and that kind of thing. So I think that's what's missing is just that mix.
I think that's a fantastic answer. And I think most of us that have been in the project management sector would agree. And this is not a plug really for Pure, but we will go ahead and shamelessly plug it too. So Pure Project Manager is a credentialing program created by Joseph Phillips, who is one of the, if not the most incredible project management trainers online that there is. And he and I, when I was on his team full time, as well as I believe we had 21 instructors, created this credentialing program where you go through it. It's 60 hours of project management training, but it's much different than the PMP, whereas it's more real world applicable. Talk about a lot of soft skills in those courses. I know Jeremiah Hammond does a course on emotional intelligence. We have a couple of courses on just being creative in the things that you're doing and allowing that creativity. Our founder, my dad, Dr. Chambers, has a course in there about customer service, because that's really lacking, and those skills are kind of lacking. And how do we treat one another, which comes back to what we're talking about here with leadership. How do we lead well? How do we treat people well? And what does that look like? And so, if anybody's interested in that, that's what we're discussing there, and we can put a link to that as well. But I do think you're right. I think it's just, the fundamentals are so good. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with that rigorous training and learning that. I think we need that. But I think it's just that day-to-day relation with people, how we talk to one another, when it's a really, really hard day, right? And everything's crashing down and it's about to snow 5 feet tomorrow. And, and you're stressed out. And am I going to get groceries in time? My kid's going to get home in time. How are we dealing with people? Are we dealing with them well? Are we dealing, like you said earlier, are we using servant leadership? Are we putting other people first before ourselves? And so why don't you talk a little bit about the servant leadership and what that looks like to you, and your thoughts and feelings on that?
Yeah, so take apart the title or the phrase servant leadership. So there's leadership, and then there's, the ominous finger pointing, go do this leadership. That's coercion in a way more than leadership, I think. But the servant part, to think about what that is. Your team is there to serve the customer, to serve you, to produce all the technology and the process work that has to go on, the finance, the business, all that stuff. But you as a PM, as a leader, you need to be able to knock down roadblocks that are in their way. You need to listen to their problems. You need to be able to effect something, even if you can't do it, there's a level of escalation that you are privileged to be in a position to take that up one level, or more. When I was in the Air Force, and I don't know that this is a phrase anymore so much, it was a thing called total quality management, or TQM. It might still be around.
Yeah, it is.
But, oh, is it? Okay. So one of the things we learned about that is that we are each everybody's customer. So no matter what you do, your output is an input to somebody else. If you're doing something, producing something, writing a report, working a schedule, whatever, that's going somewhere. The expectation or the underlying thought there is what you're doing is quality that you're giving to your customer. And, you write an email and say, hey, I'm having trouble getting this data logged into this system. It's down. Well, now they're serving you in a total quality way. I'm their customer. They're my customer when I write the email. So if you can kind of keep in mind the fact that everybody is each other's customer, that helps go along. So in servant leadership, yeah, you're serving the customer, you're serving your boss, but they also need to serve you. And the good ones really understand that. And that's what they do. And I've been in jobs where I've seen both kinds of management. Right now, I'm really happy with the management. In another job I had, in fact, 2 others I can think of, it was pretty sparse, and it was pretty don't even want to go there to talk to them because it's going to be sort of a stone wall. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
it.
I love what you said. I was trying to make sure I remembered it. So your output is someone else's input. Wow. That is probably, I'm literally going to quote that because I
That's
love
fine.
that. And it really goes back to, honestly, if we just really drill it down, it goes back to treat others the way that you want to be treated, right? If you don't
Exactly.
want that input in, don't put it out.
Yeah.
And we're all guilty of it. None of us, none of us don't fail at this, but we can learn and we can refine and we can become better at that. And so, because we are so honored to have Sloane on with us today, I want Sloane to speak a little bit about that, not from a very personal level, but I know she's been through some experiences and I think she can speak to that as well. So let's hear a little bit about that.
Yes. So I have been a part of an organization where healthy leadership was definitely lacking. I've written a blog post about it, and I wrote a follow-up. It's on our website. I will say this, I learned a lot. You can learn a lot from people who are lacking those leadership qualities and skills. I think a lot of times it's not that a leader wakes up and thinks, today's the day I'm going to be a bad leader.
Yeah.
I think that when they don't have those soft skills, when they don't know the processes themselves well, right, they're going to come in, there's going to be inconsistency, and there's going to be a lot of assumptions. You're going to get in over your head, and that's when you're going to snap at people, right? And we see that. So, and they're people too, right? So you have to take that into account. But I do think a lot of times the ability is not there, not the mean motivation to be a leader, but I am very grateful to be where I'm at now. I have consistent leadership. I have kind leadership. I'm not just saying that because she's also on the podcast. She knows how grateful I am every day. I tell her every day. And when you've experienced lacking leadership, when you have a leader that is kind to you just as a human being, but then leads you well, you're happy to come to work. You're happy to do what they say.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that too, because I've seen both sides of the spectrum as well. I think one thing is, as you were saying, I was thinking sometimes I think that we fail as leaders, though, and we don't train leaders to be or train our people to be leaders. I say a lot, I think I've said on some of the other episodes, and if not, you probably hear it. I want people that are better than me. I want people that can do better and faster and greater than I am. I'm only one person. And so as we're building IOL, that's one of my big focuses is in the people that we're hiring and the people that we're aligning with. I want people that are better and that can make me better. And I think that's part of leadership too, is and you have to really humble yourself to that, right? Because we're not innate. That's not innate in us. And as humans, like, oh, I want people that are better than me around me. No, like, the sinful nature of it says, oh, I don't want that. Then that's competition. But you have to come to a level of humility where you say, no, I really want these better people and I want them to shine and I want them to do well. I want to train them and I want them to train me and I want it to be reciprocal. And I think when you can get to that point, which takes a lot of emotional intelligence, that's when you can become a better leader and really kind of turn things around. You can turn a whole team around if you want to, if you can become humble in it.
Yeah, absolutely. While we were talking about the other subject and this one, something kept flashing in my head about the concept of servant leadership and being each other's customers. Can you imagine, like, the job of being customer service? Like you call up or you chat with somebody on Amazon, and all day or some company, all day they've been pounded by people that are unhappy. And one of the things we can do as people, in terms of we're each other's customers things, is sort of shine our light of understanding
Yeah.
their position, walk in their shoes. And the funny thing is, as frustrated as I can be with some of the issues that you have with a particular company, I've had a couple of interesting endings to chats where the customer service person will actually say, "Thank you. You have been the nicest person I've talked to today." And when I can end a chat like that with a customer service person where I was frustrated in the beginning and they feel better and they can hang up and go on to the next call, it's like putting a little gas in the tank. It's like,
It
okay,
is.
gone.
And you're putting that into that person. And I love that. And
Yeah.
I think we should all be so mindful of that because it's true. Like we get in a frustrating situation. We may have a product or let's just talk about the internet because our internet is terrible. And so sometimes, you might have to make that call, but I think there's multiple ways to do that, right? We can do it in anger and frustration
Yeah.
and we might get it fixed, right? And we can yell and scream. And I know, I'll be honest with you, there's times in the past when I've done that and it's gotten fixed, but it wasn't right. And did I feel good afterwards? No. And did they feel good afterwards? No. And so I love that. I love that example because we should all be better at that, right? We should be the ones setting the example and saying, hey, I know you've had 100 calls today, just like me, and you really don't want to talk to me, but let's see if we can work this out and make this a pleasant experience. So
Yeah,
that's a
exactly.
great example. Sloane, I'm going to let you ask the next question as well.
Okay, this is a fun one. I'm excited. I'm going to be a little nosy and I'm going to get some answers that I'm looking forward to. You are a private pilot, a ham radio operator, and you spoke with the International Space Station. You're a former radio DJ and someone whose work appeared at the Paris Air Show. What have these experiences outside of work taught you about leadership and communication?
The first thing that came to my mind when you started going through that list was being humbled by it all. It's kind of like it's taught me that the things we achieve on earth are abilities we should be feel blessed with. Can wake up in the morning and we can do whatever we want, right? We can choose to rob a bank. We can choose to get elected to be some important person. You can get a career advancement. But the longer you're in whatever you do, you start seeing this list of things. And I'm sort of a curious person. I like different things, and that's cool, which is probably why that list it kind of jumps from left to right to zig to zag and all that stuff. But I'm kind of humbled by it all. It's like I'm sad that it's all over, but some of it still continues. I'd love to do radio again. I'd love to do podcasting. I'd love to go to the Paris Air Show again, but the fact that we got to go there and demonstrate a system and stuff like that was just a wild experience. So I don't know. It's kind of reminded me that, be the best we can every day, be the right kind of person every day, and that list will grow. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to take advantage or be proud of the things you get to do in life and learn from everything every day. I like the slogan, which I heard somewhere and I can't remember where, that's every day is a school day. So if you take the lessons that you can learn every day and build upon them, and then shine the light of your, I want to say, customer behavior with everybody, that really, it helps. That also gives you more opportunities because the more people know about you for the things that you can do and how you work with them to do that, you get more opportunities. I think life opens up doors in many ways.
Great answer.
Yeah, I think your humility, which is obvious and inspiring, that is what allows you, every day to be a school day. You stay curious, there are still things for you to learn, and that is why you have had so many opportunities, so many cool opportunities, right? And you get to share those with people. We like to talk to people who have done cool things, but they're humble about it,
Yeah.
and so when I saw that list, I was like, that is a crazy list. I love that.
Yeah, it's really great and really inspiring too. It made me think about I need to probably do some more stuff. I had a gentleman who was equal to a grandfather to me. He's passed now, but he did ham radio stuff and he was huge into it, and it was a passion of his. And so when I saw that, I was like, it reminded me of him, and that was a good memory to have. So that's really interesting. I like that a lot. All right, so we have 2 more questions for you. These 2 questions we're going to ask everybody on the podcast. And one of the reasons that we collaborated about this and chose to do this is because everyone's experiences are different, right? And everyone looks at things a little bit differently. And everyone has been through different leadership styles with different people. And so we kind of drilled it down to these 2 questions to ask everybody to kind of get a broad perspective of if everybody answered the same question, what would their answer be? So I'm going to ask you the first one. Sloane's going to follow up with the last one. So the first one is, name a leader that you admire and share briefly why that leader has influenced you.
I started thinking about that sometime over the last few months, just looking back at the things I've done. So that's an interesting question. The name I can tell you right away is a Navy captain named Drew Beasley. The reason I remember that name so well for the applicability to what we're talking about today is it was the last assignment I had in the Air Force, and it was on what they call a joint program where you have all the services involved. So he was a Navy captain as our boss. I never had anybody other than Air Force leadership before. We had all the services involved. It was not on a military installation. It was in a research park. So we were isolated, for me, the nearest Air Force base from the Orlando area was Patrick, which is out on the coast. So your normal services like the BX and all that stuff, it just didn't play. You were in the community, which was really cool. He understood that. He understood that well. And he had been they had these really cool boats in the Navy. I don't even know if I'm allowed to call them boats. He might, because I remember talking about ships, and one time I called it a boat, and he didn't like that. So anyway, he was a commander on one of those, but he knew how to lead teams. He knew how to be dynamic in his emotions. He knew how to be connected to the people that worked for him. He knew what his customer wanted. He knew how to set the vision for the team. And he had an interesting philosophy once that he put on us. You can see a person and every now and then they'll blow up, especially leaders. They will, all of a sudden in a meeting, they become that almost a little bit scary, angry person that you don't usually want to hang around with too much. But he had he had a philosophy that you get in any assignment in the military, and I guess you could elaborate and, make that into how you get hold up the fingers, right? You get 3 MADs. So what are MADs? It's those instances where you put your foot down and you maybe pound the table a little bit. He said you get 3 of those, and the reason you get 3 of those is because sometimes you need those many. But when you go beyond that, you start to become not the servant leader. You start to become not the boss you want to follow, but the one you want to start to fear. And that's when teams start to cover things up and keep things to themselves, and the communication breaks down and the trust breaks down and the whole thing breaks down. So I would say, Captain Drew Beasley, thank you for that wisdom. And that's the one I'd name it.
That's wonderful. I love that answer. It's so good. And I love that too, because yeah, I think after that amount, right, we're going to start changing our character, right? We're going to start changing the posture of our heart, and it's really going to start beginning to change who we are. And I can remember a situation many, many, many years ago when I was the boss, and I had a really young guy working for me, and I just loved him to death. He was just so fun and so full of life and so intelligent. He got himself caught up in a situation, and I ended up having to write him up, and I didn't want to. And I told him that. I said, I really don't want to, but this is like too many times and I can't deal with this. And he ended up getting irate, and it was a whole thing. And I ended up having to let him go because he used some language with me that I couldn't. Well, there is a bright side to this story, because a couple years later, I was hiring again for a position, and he came into my office and he said, I was really wrong, and I was in a bad place, and things were, I was in some things that I shouldn't have. And he said, first of all, I owe you an apology. And I was like, well, thank you. I appreciate you humbling yourself and being able to do that. It's important. He said, well, would you ever consider hiring me back for this position? And I said, well, let me think about it and pray about it. I said, I don't know. I said, I really, really need to give it some thought. And I did. I gave it a few days, and then I called him back and asked him to come into my office. And I said, hey, I think I do want to give you another try. I think there were some things going on at the time, and let's give it a go. And so I put him on a probation period. He ended up being my absolute best employee that I ever had. He was, besides Sloane, of course, but he was phenomenal. He did amazing work. He was so grateful. I was so grateful. And so I think sometimes we do have to have that moment. I don't know why. I don't know all the ins and outs of it. I knew some of it, but I also think it's important that, we give people another chance. And it certainly sounds like that was a case where you had a leader who allowed people to be human beings, because we are human beings and sometimes we are faulty, even when we try our best. So that is a great example. I love that. All right.
That is,
Sloane's
I'm going
gonna
to use
follow
that. You
up.
get 3 MADs. 3
Yeah.
MADs. That's it. I like it.
That's it.
I like it.
I'm going to use that with my kids too. You get 3. That's all you get.
Yeah. You've used
Mike, can you clarify for us? Like, what's the time period on that? Is like forever?
Well, no. Well, I mean, he said it during a military assignment, which,
Sure.
in our world was 3 to 4 years. So, space them out.
Better use them wisely then.
I like it.
I think that's
more
great
strict.
advice though. Like, what if we all live by that? Because we would probably use them much, much more carefully, right? We would say, oh, no, this particular situation is not worth one of my 3 MADs, right?
That's right.
Yeah, that's more hardcore than 3 strikes, you're out. You only get 3 MADs in 3 years. Wow, I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe I won't start using that for other people. I don't want them using it for me. I've got a last question for you, sir. When you think about your legacy as a leader, what lasting impact do you hope it will have on people or organizations?
Good question. My legacy as a leader, I don't even think of my legacy. Yeah, I remember Mike. He was, now fill in the blank. I hope. And if I'm not, and any of the folks that I know, if you're watching this, I don't mind a little prompting. It's, you need to do this a little better, that a little better, because every day's a school day. Okay.
Mhm.
So what do I think it would be is I was good to work with. I was fun. I was efficient. I was nice to them. I taught them some stuff. I was always available. I was dependable. And I was, if you want to use the term servant leader, yeah, that'd be cool if somebody said that about me, but I have to earn it. So I think that kind of wraps it up. Yeah.
Yeah. And before we came on here, Mike, I told Sloane, I said, you're going to love Mike. He's super fun. He's a really, really nice guy. And so just so you know, I think that about you already. And I think through our interactions and through things that we've interacted on LinkedIn and things like that, I can only imagine that you are a pretty great guy to work with. So I don't think your team members are suffering with you by their side. Well, Mike, I want to thank you so much for the opportunity of having you on here. The honor is truly ours. Like I said in the beginning, you've done some amazing things and it's pretty incredible. And you're very humble about it. And I think that you speak volumes to what a good leader is, because it takes a lot to be like that. It takes a lot not to use your three strikes. All right. So let's tell people again about your newsletter. How can we find it? What's the best way to get a hold of you if they want to connect with you? Let's just speak a little bit to that before we close up.
Yeah, sure. The easiest way to find it is go to the LinkedIn profile, and under the picture in the little banner, there's a thing that says, check out my newsletter or something like that. The other way, if you really wanted to just instantly do it, there's a website, the platform that I use for the newsletter called beehive.com, and that's BEEHIIV.com. And then you could put a space and then Mike Fesko. It's probably going to pop up. The name of the newsletter is Being a Project Manager, because that's the stuff that I'm trying to talk about. It's sort of like, hey, this is what being a project manager is like. So that's how I can do that.
All that stuff in the links in this video, there'll be links to everything, and we'll try to go back and make links to all the stuff that we've talked about here, all the different collaborations and everything.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on with us. We appreciate you so much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Amanda and Sloane. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you.